What does it take to actually become successful in real estate investing? Well, if you're anything like me, it took me becoming focused and becoming obsessed with passive income, with financial freedom, and just with real estate in general. So it took me listening to 8 to 10 hours of podcasts every single day and audiobooks and YouTube videos by Robert Kiyosaki, by Ken McElroy, by the real estate guys, by Brandon Turner, by Bigger Pockets. And it took me listening to stuff like that every single day in order to keep learning and keep growing and to stay focused and become obsessed with my one goal, which was to become financially free with real estate and passive income as fast as I could. And I think that's really what you have to do to become successful in anything, is to become so obsessed and so focused that you don't want to do anything else. So I go on the Real Estate Guys Summit at Sea every year. I've went for the last 3 or 4 years now. And I've heard Robert Helms, which is the host of the Real Estate Guys, and Robert Kiyosaki and Ken McElroy, all three say the same thing. If you want to be successful in anything, first you got to be, then you have to do, and then you can have. Now, what does that mean? Because it kind of sounds stupid. Be, do, have. I mean, what does that mean? Well, what it really means is that first you start off with be. So what does be mean? Well, be means that you have to become the person, say, that owns 100 units or 1,000 units or just invested in real estate in general. You have to become that person. Well, how do you become that person? You become that person by investing in your education. Now, investing in your education doesn't just mean, say, spending $10,000 and going to a seminar, spending $1,000 and going to a seminar, spending $100,000 and, say, spending a day with Robert Kiyosaki or Ken McElroy if they offer it. But what that can mean could just mean just investing your time. Going to a free seminar, say, in your town, or listening to a free audiobook or a free YouTube video or a free podcast. All that means is that you are investing your time in learning and growing every single day and becoming obsessed and focused with your goal. Whatever your goal may be, whether it's to buy 100 units or just to buy your first duplex. But in order to do it, you have to become super focused and super obsessed with that goal. So first you have to become, next you have to do. So what does that mean? Do means that you have to go and you have to start doing what you would have to do in order to reach your goal. So that means you have to, if your goal is to buy real estate, that means you have to go and you have to make offers daily. You have to go and talk to real estate agents. You have to go and build a network that, say, a network of other investors that may want to sell. You have to go and invest daily and spend every single day doing what you actually want to do, because a lot of people go and they get to the B. And I know a lot of people like this that want to invest in real estate, that listen to podcasts, that read books, that have read the same books I have. I've read every single book that Robert Kiyosaki's wrote. I've read every single book that Ken McElroy's wrote, because I'm obsessed. I'm focused. And I know people that say they're obsessed and focused, and they say, well, I just want to buy, my first rental property. And say, a year later, they don't. And then another year later, they don't. And another year later, they don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what if they wanted to? What if they really wanted to, and they focus on the B, and then they never focus on the do? They don't go and make daily goals that they have to do every single day. They don't go and say, hey, I'm going to write 10 offers this week, or I'm going to call 10 brokers this week, or I'm going to talk to 10 investors this week. They don't make goals like that. They do the be, and they halfway become who they need to become, but they don't do the do. And if you do the do, then eventually you can have your goals, which means that if your goal is 100 units, eventually you'll have 100 units. But first, you have to start off with that B. And a lot of people that are stuck on the B step focus on, what could go wrong. I know I have a lot of people like, I have $1 million in debt right now in real estate, and a lot of people think that any kind of debt is bad. And they're like, well, what if your tenants don't pay, or what if somebody trips and falls and sues you, or what if your property, what if it burns down, what if I don't know, what if you lost your property, what if the banks called the loans because you have debt? Well, what if everybody paid me and I made $10,000 in a single month? What if I become financially free with real estate and never had to work again? What if I become a multi millionaire with real estate? What if you become a multi millionaire in real estate? Well, what if the sun fell out of the sky tomorrow? What if the world ended tomorrow? What if somebody did fall and sue me tomorrow and I lost everything? What if the banks called the loans tomorrow and I lost everything? Well, you can't focus on the what ifs. You can't control if somebody, well, you kind of can control if somebody slips and falls and sues you, but not really. You can't control if a tenant pays, but what you have to focus on, what you can control, you can focus on putting good tenants in there that pass the background check, that have had the same job for a few years, that might have good credit, that have money in the bank. You can focus on that, and you can kind of control the what ifs that way. You can control if you've got too much debt on your property, that if one tenant didn't pay you, that you're losing money. You can control that. But a lot of people just focus on things that they can't control, and that makes it to where they cannot reach their goals. And really, it can ruin everything if you focus on fear. And a lot of people do that. I know I focused on fear. I've not bought properties and stuff because of out of fear. Well, what if I couldn't do that? And it happens sometimes. But if you never can get over that fear of the what ifs, then your life will never change. What if you never took any risk? Robert Kiyosaki says that a lot of people want to be secure and they want to be comfortable and they never have to worry about anything. Well, in one of his books, he talks about how the most secure people in this world are people in jail. Those people are going to be fed every single day. They're going to have a place to live every single day. Now they could have to worry about other inmates and stuff, killing them or something like that. But besides that, they're the most secure people on the planet. So do you really want to be secure, or do you want to be comfortable? Comfortable. If you're comfortable, you might have a job that pays you $10,000 a month, or $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Maybe that's all you need is $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Well, if you had a job that pays you, say, $6,000 a month, but you spend $4,000, and you're working and you're investing in your retirement in like a Roth or a 401k, you're comfortable, and that's okay if that's what you want. But in order to be rich, you have to step out of your comfort zone sometimes, and you have to take risks. I know when I bought my first duplex at 20 years old, I had never done it before, but I had listened to 8 to 10 hours of podcast every single day. I had read every single one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, every single one of Ken's books. I had listened to Brandon Turner. I had listened to bigger podcasts. I had listened to every single one of those people, all those podcasts. But still, even though then I had listened to all of that, I was still worried. What if tenants don't pay you? You're still going to have those thoughts, but you have to overcome them. And you have to overcome them in order to achieve your goals. I bought that first duplex. I only made $200 or $300 a month. It wasn't a lot, but I overcome the fear of it. And once I overcame the fear, that one fear of investing in real estate with the debt and if tenants don't pay you, well, after that, your next one's even easier. You don't really have the same fear anymore, because you're like, well, okay, well, this one went good for, I think it took me a year and a half before I bought my next property. Well, that one went good for a year and a half. Well, why would I worry about this one? I bought another one. It's like, well, why would I worry about that one? I'm signing on the loan. I'm not worried at all. Well, then that one works out for, I think it was another year before I bought another. I bought 7 units after that. Well, I'm not worried at all. Okay, well, I can do this, and sign on the loan. Everything goes good then, and then I buy another one, another duplex, and everything's going good. I buy it. I'm still not worried. Why am I not worried? Because I've done it before. Once you do stuff that you've wanted to do, and you get over the fear of wanting to do it, and the worriness of buying the perfect property, or the worriness of, well, it's not going to make a lot of money, and I might lose a month if a tenant moves out, or What if tenants break something and I have to fix it? All of those are, they're fears. They're things that can happen. But you just have to overcome them and focus on what can happen. And the way that you do that is through listening to real estate books, listening to audiobooks, going to seminars, going to meet and greets in your local cities, I go on the Real Estate Guys Summit every year. I've met some of my best friends there. I've met some really, really good people, really rich people there. I've met Ken McElroy there, Robert Kiyosaki, George Gammon, Peter Schiff, Robert Helms. I've met a lot of successful people like that. A lot of people you wouldn't even know because they just invest in real estate. They might not do YouTube or Instagram, or show their success, but they're still successful. And the one thing that they all have in common is that they got over that first fear of investing in real estate. And that's one of the hardest things for some people to do. But being around people like that have overcame their fears, that have done what you're wanting to do, that's what you've got to do. You've got to surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do. And whenever you do that, it makes being successful a lot easier. I know that after I bought my first duplex, I met a guy here in Richmond that done a real estate class. He owns 800 units where we live at, and he's been investing for, I think, 20 years now. So in 20 years, he's bought 800 apartments. He's a multi-millionaire, and he's one of my best friends. And I talk to him now probably at least, once a week or once every 2 weeks. I'll call him or text him. We'll talk for a few minutes or 20 minutes. But it's great to know somebody like that that's doing what you want to do, that you can talk to on a regular basis like that. Because if you don't have anybody like that, it makes it a lot harder to invest in real estate and really to do anything that you really want to do. And I heard a story one time about a guy. This guy was with he was with his mentor, who was a really rich guy. And this guy wasn't rich, but the other guy was really rich, had a bunch of businesses and things. Maybe real estate. I don't know. I don't really remember that part of the story. But they were at the beach in the ocean, and he's talking to his mentor. He's like, what does it really take in order to become rich like you and wealthy? And his mentor looked over at him, put his arms on his shoulders, and held the guy underwater for a minute. There's bubbles coming up. He's fighting his mentor, trying to get out of the water. His mentor almost drowns him. And he comes up. He's like, what's wrong with you? I just asked you what it took to be rich and wealthy. What is wrong with you? And the mentor says, you have to want to be rich and wealthy and successful as bad as you want to breathe. So, that's a really important lesson. That if you don't want it as bad as you want to breathe, you're not going to be rich. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to be wealthy because you're not obsessed and you're not focused on your goals. And that's another thing. You've got to write your goals down. Every single year, I write my goals down. I write down what I want to do that year. I write down how many units I want to buy. I write down, maybe how many millions of dollars in real estate that I want. I write down what I want to do with my life. I write down if I want to get rid of anything. I write down what I want to do that year. Maybe I want to go on a couple trips. Maybe I want to spend more time with my wife. Maybe I want to spend more time with family. Maybe I want to invest in systems to where I had more free time. But no matter what your goal is, you need to write it down. You need to become obsessed and focused on that one goal to where that's all that matters. Now, of course, it's not all that matters, but to where you're focusing on it every single day, you're becoming obsessed with it every single day, and eventually you'll become the person that does that kind of stuff, that does real estate investing and is rich. You'll do what you need to do in order to become rich and successful in real estate, and then you'll have whatever you want. My name is Britton Needs. I own $1.5 million in real estate, and I'm obsessed and focused with buying as much real estate as possible and achieving my goals. If you like this video, or if you want to follow my journey, subscribe for more.